What does it mean to live in a world where your thoughts are not your own, where history is rewritten daily, and the fabric of reality itself is constantly distorted? George Orwell's 1984 takes us to a nightmarish world of totalitarian control, a world that raises timeless questions about truth, power, and the human spirit. And this video isn't just a book analysis. This is a philosophical breakdown. So buckle up, because today we are going to dive deeply into 1984 by George Orwell. George Orwell, born Eric Arthur Blair, was no stranger to hardship, contradiction, and the fight against oppression. Born in 1903 in British India, Orwell's early life was one of relatively privilege, yet he was acutely aware of the inequalities that permeated society. Educated at Eton, one of England's most prestigious schools, Orwell's upbringing could have easily aligned him with the elites. But Orwell had a different path. His career began with a stark confrontation of colonialism, when he worked as a police officer in Burma during the rule of the British Empire. Orwell later reflected on this experience with disillusionment, as it exposed him to the mechanism of domination and the moral compromises inherent in the power structures. This first-hand encounter with the injustice of colonialism would lay the groundwork to his lifelong opposition to totalitarianism and other unchallenged hierarchies. Orwell's experiences during the Spanish Civil War solidified his political stance. Fighting against Franco's fascist regime, Orwell witnessed how propaganda, betrayal, and factionalism fracture even those striving for freedom. These events didn't just shape Orwell's political beliefs. This cemented his obsession with understanding how power operates. When Orwell wrote 1984, he was already battling tuberculosis, a disease that would take his life only months after the novel was published. The urgency of his declining health lent the book a sense of immediacy, as though Orwell was issuing one last warning to the world. The backdrop of 1984 is critical to understanding its impact. The novel emerged in 1949, a time when the scars of World War II were still raw, and the world was navigating the uneasy terrain of the Cold War. Totalitarian regimes, most notably Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, had demonstrated the terrifying extent to which governments could control, manipulate, and oppress their populations. Orwell drew heavily on these examples, crafting a world that felt both fictional and chillingly plausible. The global reaction to 1984 was immense. Many hailed it as a masterpiece, a harrowing vision of the future that serves as a warning. However, the novel also faced significant backlash. In the United States, it was frequently challenged for its political overtones and explicit content. In the Soviet Union, it was outright banned, as its scathing critique of authoritarianism cut uncomfortably close to the bone. Even in democratic societies, 1984 sparked debates about censorship, freedom, and the responsibility of art to challenge power. Ironically, the very acts of banning and censoring the book underscored the themes Orwell sought to expose. What makes 1984 particularly enduring is its prescience. Concepts like mass surveillance, media manipulation, and the erosion of truth have only grown more relevant in the digital age. Orwell didn't just write a dystopian novel, he created a framework for understanding the fragility of freedom and the nature of control. At its core, 1984 is a story of Winston Smith, a man trapped in the oppressive grip of the party led by the omnipresent Big Brother. Winston's life revolves around falsifying historical records to align with the party's ever-changing narrative. A grim irony, as Winston himself yearns for an immutable truth. Winston's rebellion begins quietly, through forbidden thoughts and a secret love affair with Julia, who share his disdain for the party. Together, they seek refuge in their shared humanity, daring to dream of a life beyond the party's reach. But their defiance is short-lived. Betrayed by an ally and subjected to brutal, both psychological and physical torture, Winston is ultimately broken. By the novel's end, he no longer resists. He has learned to love Big Brother. The narrative of 1984 is bleak, but its purpose is not to offer comfort. Instead, it forces readers to confront the consequences of unlimited power and the vulnerabilities of the human spirit. 1984 is incredibly rich in philosophical issues. At its core, it's the concept of the totalitarian control, where the state dictates not just actions but also thoughts. Orwell's party doesn't just seek obedience, it seeks to dominate reality itself. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. The statement isn't just pure propaganda. It's a terrifying assertion of how truth can be distorted, destroyed, and rewritten by those in power. Orwell shows how history is malleable, rewritten at will to fit the narrative of those in power. For example, there is a chilling moment in the novel when Oceania's war adversary suddenly changes. One day, the enemy is Eurasia. The next, it's East Asia. There is no transition, no explanation. The party declares that Oceania has always been at war with East Asia, and everyone instantly conforms. The Ministry of Truth works feverishly to erase any evidence that Eurasia was ever the enemy, altering records, newspapers, and even individual memories. This serves as a brutal demonstration of the party's power over the reality itself. Truth is whatever they say it is. Big Brother is more than just a leader. He is the embodiment of absolute control. His face looms over every aspect of life, a symbol of the party's omnipresence. He is worshipped like a god, though it's unclear whether he really exists as a person. His role is to instill fear and devotion simultaneously, ensuring that loyalty to the party is not only forced but also internalized. Big Brother represents surveillance, manipulation, and the crushing of individuality, a figure both revered and feared, making resistance psychologically impossible. The concept of doublethink is one of the novel's most disturbing ideas. It's the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously and accept both as true. This is not just cognitive dissonance, it's a requirement for survival in Orwell's world. The party demands absolute loyalty, even when its declarations defy logic. A citizen might see the world one way, yet immediately adjust their thinking to align with the party's version of reality. Truth becomes fluid, and people no longer trust their own perception, only what Big Brother dictates. Then there's also newspeak, the party's effort to limit language itself. If words shape thought, then by eliminating words, the party eliminates the ability to conceive rebellion. In Orwell's world, words like justice or freedom are erased, leaving only terms that reinforce party's doctrine. This reduction of language mirrors real-world political euphemisms and the way rhetoric is used to manipulate perception. Love, too, is systematically erased. Passion, attachment, and emotional connection are viewed as threats to the party's absolute control. Sex also is stripped from intimacy and reduced to a mere function for reproduction, serving only to create new party members. Winston and Julia's act of love is an act of rebellion, because it presents something beyond party's reach, genuine human connection. Of course, they try to escape the party's grip, seeking solace in their stolen moments together. But ultimately, even the love is not enough to escape the party's crushing power. Orwell also presents an idea of perpetual war, a tool used by the party to maintain control. Oceania is always at war, though the enemy shifts constantly. The war isn't meant to be won. It's meant to sustain fear and justify oppression. This endless conflict keeps citizens loyal and dependent on the state. But it also serves another purpose. It unites the people under a common cause. Sounds familiar? A central enemy creates a sense of unity, a tactic that has been used throughout history, and it's still employed by various regimes today to maintain public control and deflect attention from internal issues. But perhaps the most horrifying idea of 1984 is the complete reduction of individuality. Winston's journey isn't about triumph, but about complete submission. The party doesn't just dissenters, it breaks them. Room 101, the infamous torture chamber, isn't about physical pain but psychological destruction. The goal isn't just to eliminate rebellion, it's to make it impossible. Winston's torture is relentless. O'Brien systematically breaks his spirit, forcing him to betray everything he once held dear. The ultimate test comes when he is confronted with his biggest fear: rats. In his terror, Winston abandons all resistance and begs for Julia to be tortured in his place. Therefore, ultimately, betraying his love to Julia. In that moment, he loses not just the fight against the party, but his very sense of self. Later in the novel, Winston and Julia meets again after being released from prison, which is ironically called the Ministry of Love. Winston sits in the cafe, fully brainwashed and devoid of resistance. His love for Julia has been replaced by apathy, and his thoughts align completely with the party's doctrine. Winston's rebellion isn't only crushed, it's erased. He gazes at a portrait of Big Brother and feels a surge of affection. Orwell's chilling last line captures this transformation. He loved Big Brother. And this ending is crucial because it shows that the party's power isn't only about the external control, but about the internal transformation. Winston isn't just defeated, he's completely remade. His rebellion, his love, his individual identity even, all are completely erased. The party doesn't just want to silence dissent, it wants to make dissent impossible by changing the very nature of human consciousness. The novel forces us to ask unsettling questions. How much perception of reality is shaped by those in power? How easily history can be rewritten in a world where information is controlled? Is true freedom even possible? Orwell wasn't just describing a dystopian nightmare, he was issuing a warning. His book urges vigilance against those that seek total control, and not just over our actions, but also over our thoughts. And 1984 seems to be still relevant today, because the mechanism of control that Orwell described seems to be still at play. Governments and corporations collect vast amount of data about us. Surveillance technology is more advanced than ever, and misinformation spreads at an uncontrollable rate. And the idea of newspeak echoes in how social media platforms filter information, shaping the narratives people see. And political doublethink seems also to be at present. We can observe how truth is distorted to fit ideological needs. The novel warns us to be skeptical, to question what we are told, and to fight for the integrity of truth. Orwell's dystopia may have been fiction, but its shadows loom large in the real world. Okay, it's time to announce book for April. And as you guessed, is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This psychological masterpiece will challenge us with questions about guilt, morality, and the quest for redemption. Following Raskolnikov's journey, we'll explore the murky waters of justice and human conscience. I really like this book and I'm very excited. Okay, and it's time for a hint for a book for May. It's a contemporary novel that explores themes of identity, migration, and complex layers of family history. It's written by a poet, and this book blends prose and poetic language to tell a deeply personal story about belonging, love, and the immigrant experience of the author. Try to guess it. I think it's not that easy. Okay, this wraps up our philosophical deep dive into 1984. And you missed our last video in this series, you can check it out here. It's a breakdown of the novel The Picture of Dorian Gray. And for now, until next time, keep reading, keep questioning, and stay curious. Thank you for watching this video. You can subscribe, you can like. Goodbye.